Welcome back to the channel, and today we'll talk about the 2025 release horror thriller film that is Until Dawn. So we'll break down each of the entire plot of the movie, that is scene by scene, and exploring its main content and main chapters of the movie, and we'll try to uncover the truth, the hidden clues, and explaining the chilling final twist of the movie. So we see at the start of the movie, basically, we are introduced to the character of Melanie, and so the film just begins with the character introduction of Melanie, that she is exploring the fog-covered woods that is placed near Clover Valley, and she is recording a voice message to her sister Clover, expressing the uneasiness about the place that she is now present, and a sudden noise distracts her. Her flashlight flickers at the time we see, and then she is attacked by a very masked figure that is wielding a pickaxe. So blood now splatters on the leaf, and we see the screen just cuts to black automatically, indicating a kind of break that is happening between them. And the screen goes totally black. We see the title card appears, that is 1 year later. We see Clover that is still grieving her sister's disappearance and decide to investigate. And we see that alongside her ex-boyfriend Max and her friends, that is Nina, Paul, and Riley, they set out on a road trip to the last place where Melanie was seen, and Clover Valley. So we see that Clover Valley, their goal is to just find the closure, and what they don't realize is something unnatural is waiting for them. So as they approaches Clover Valley, the group stops at a very creepy roadside gas station, and we see the lone attendant, that is Hill, eyes from Verily, and he tells them strange stories about missing hikers, distorted scream, and something very unusual that even we as an audience don't know that is coming towards the group of friends that are just now going after their friend. And unnatural fog, he urges them to turn back, but they brush it off as a very small town paranoia and didn't take seriously at first sight. And Nina signs their name in a very dusty guest book that is inside their visitor center nearby, and unknowingly activating a supernatural mechanism. They continue driving until the road becomes just impassable due to mudslide, and we see the rain pours, lightning cracks at the same time, and they decide to take shelter in a very abandoned ranger station. And the group starts to biker, and we see the tension simmers as the time passes in the movie. Meanwhile, we see that something unseen is just watching them from the tree line. And as the night falls, power just flickers in their ranger station, and Paul hears footsteps outside. And when he tries to investigate, he is attacked by the same masked figure who just killed Melanie. And one by one, the friends are hunted. And Max finds Nina's mutilated body hanging in the showers. And Riley tries to escape but is impaled through the hurt. And we see that Clover is the last one thing that until the killer just stabs her in the stomach very brutally. I mean, you can just see the scene, and that scene just stuck into your mind because that killer just brutally just mutilized her, and in that abdomen and the stomach area. So it's kind of very graphic violence, you can see that. So if you love such kind of graphic violence, so I think you may like this film better. And after that, we hear her scream that it just echoes in the dark, but as she dies, she just jolts awake in the car again. And hours earlier, we see that just before they enter the Clover Valley, everyone is alive and confused, and but she questions that what has happened, and it was not a dream actually. We see the same event just began repeating with kind of eerie precision, and the horror actually isn't over, but it's starting all over again. We see now in the next scene that Clover just tries to explain the murder to the group, but no one believes her actually, and she begins to piece together what they have trapped in a time loop. And each time they die, the loop just resets, and in the second loop, they just try to make a different path, so kind of taking a different way, and but the road collapses. In other, they try staying at a motel, but the killer eventually just finds them, and each iteration just gets more violent and surreal. And Riley begins to see shadowy figures with elongated faces, and Paul finds his own corpse in a bathtub, himself from a past loop actually. And we see that Clover writes notes and hides them in her boot to remember what has happened earlier. And the group just realizes that killer isn't only the threat, but something even bigger is just toying with them. In the fourth loop actually, where in the next scene we see that Riley begins behaving just erratically, and out of nowhere she just became acting kind of very dramatic, and he whispers name in a very ancient language. We see that even we cannot get the language sign or something like that, because that is just unknown to us too. And we see that his eyes go black briefly, and Nina catches him scratching a strange symbol into the wooden walls. Clover discovers that this marking just match sigils from a very old miner's diary that is just found beneath the visitor's center. Now Riley disappears, and when they find them again, he's hunched over into the basement, mumbling and rolling, and he attacks Nina with unnatural strength before vanishing into shadows. We see that Group finds a room full of surveillance monitor, and one screen shows a flickering image of Melanie being dragged into a mine. And they are not just reliving events, but they are just watched, they are controlled, they are studied. So this is kind of detailing that we need right there. We see in the next scene the character of Clover and Max just investigate town records, and the shocking discovery is actually that they have made through this process of investigation that they come to know about the Clover Valley that has suffered a mining disaster in the 1930s, and hundreds were trapped underground and only a handful of them were survived. So these survivors were committed to a psychiatric family that is run by Dr. Alan Hill. And now Dr. Alan Hill just believed fear could be weaponized. He experimented on the survivors, inducing trauma, induced psychosis, and trying to awaken something ancient within the human mind. So the institution was eventually shut down after a fire, and but Phil just vanished out of nowhere. And Clover realizes the mask killer is wearing the same mask as the institution staff. So they are not being stalked by a man, but by fear itself, shaped by trauma and repeating its loop. So we see the group attempt to just break the loop in the next scene, and they burn the guest book Nina's that is just signed, and hoping to erase their names from the so-called curse that have just brought the very difficult times of fate to them. But the house retaliates in a very different and very hostile way, and water from the faucet just turns black and acidic, and Riley returns now fully possessed, crawling on the walls and snarling like an animal. So Megan is torn apart by unseen claws in a hallway that is just filled with mirrors. Actually, we see the mirrors reflect not the reality but it fears, and Max sees his dead mother just blaming him for her suicide. We see that Paul runs through an endless hallway, each door opening into the same burning room. And Clover almost drowns into a very sinkhole that is filled with blood, and she is pulled out by Max but loses a finger and the loop resets again. We see a new threat that just arises from that is from the mine entrances, that monstrous humanoid like creature that is Wendigos just began hunting the group, and these are actually the mutated remains of Hill's patient. They are starved and twisted by the time and the madness and all of the things that has just occurred to them. Now Clover just tries to decipher an old journal that is revealing the creatures fed on fear. The more scared you are, actually, the more real they become. And Max sacrifices himself into one loop to draw them away. In another loop, we see that Clover uses deep breathing and chants to suppress her fear. And we see that Wendigos fade, but it doesn't last. And Hill's voice just echoes through the radios, taunting them that your fear is actually fuel that is just fueling them, giving them energy because they feed on their fear. And the friend begins turning on each other, suspecting of possession like activities. We see that only Clover remains very clear minded about the thing that, and he remains very certain about his opinion. So we see that Clover finds an old therapy tape that is recorded by Melanie actually, and on the tape we see that Melanie just speaks of reliving the same day again and again before she has vanished. And we see that she warns that Hill's house actually is not a place but a vessel for looping consciousness. And the visitor centers was built atop the ruins of the Hills Asylum that was present before. So actually each reset strips the group of hope, and we finally see that Clover just realizes that they are not meant to survive, they are meant to break. So the only way out is to finish what Melanie has started from the start, to confront Hill and destroy the source that is just starting the loop. So it's kind of very twisted story. We see here that every event from the future is just connected to what has happened in the past. And we see that Clover leads the last survivors, that is Paul and Nina, into the bowels of the house. We see that beneath the visitor center is a kind of a hidden medical wing, and that wing is just lined with the rusted equipments and wall scribbled in blood, and they find rows of bodies in tank that are just preserved patient actually, part human, part Wendigo. And now Paul begins hallucinating, and He sees his childhood bully just tormenting him. The fear consumes him, and he's dragged into a vent by very shaking hands, and he's just frightened at that point of time, unknown by what has come and what kind of danger that is just present in front of him. Nina just panics and accidentally stabs herself, thinking that she's being attacked. And Clover finds Dr. Hill's chamber, that is a very grand and decayed office that is filled with tapes and tombs and an old ritual circle. And Hill appears alive but inhuman, and his mind is just scattered over across the timelines. We see that he welcomes Clover as his final patient. In the next scene and before the ending scene, we see that Dr. Hill explains his theory where fear resists the soul actually. So we see that through the repetition and the terror, he seeks to transcend mortality, and the guests are just subjects actually. We see they are fragments of a singular psyche, and Clover realizes her own memories are fraying. She sees herself in a Melanie's shoes. Hill pours her a drink that is water from the cursed pipe, and Clover switches the glasses and forces Hill to drink it. His body just erupts from within, not expecting what to expect actually, because something out of expected things is just happening at that point of time. The ritual circle ignites and Wendigos descend, devouring his body as the room collapses. The screen flashes with their past loops, a montage of deaths, screams, and desperate plans. Everything begins to implode, and Clover claws to the surface, light pouring through the cracks. We see that Clover awakens just before sunrise, and the sky is tingled red, but there's no fog actually. We see that no echoes, no loop, no nothing, any sign of what has happened earlier. She walks alone to the car and then just finds Mac's old note that says that don't forget who you are, and she drives down the road. And this time it stretches into the daylight, and final twist reveals Hill's monitor screen still running in a very snowy lodge, hinting that the next cycle may already have begun elsewhere. And the experiment just continues. Faded to black, credit rolls, and we see in the mid-credit scene that shows a new group of travelers arriving the same gas station. Hill, restored, greets them with a grin. So actually, I guess this is kind of continuation of the story. I think if particularly talk about the ending scene or the ending explain of this video or the ending explain of this film Until Dawn 2025, when we actually are introduced to the final twist, where we see a monitor just I think flickers on a very in a snowy lodge and showing the live footage of another group arriving. So we see at that point of time where there is a presence of a man, and who appears to be Dr. Hill actually, that is restored and greets them with a smile, implying the loop actually may be eternal, and it's kind of continuous but disrupted maybe, and just relocated to a new setting. We see, I think the ending might suggest that the experiment was not just localized to Glover Valley, but it's part of something larger and perhaps an ancient a supernatural system or a secretive ongoing kind of operation. And as I stated earlier, fear is the thing because it feeds on your fear, and the more fear the subjects endure, the more control the system actually gains over them. And even Clover may be escaped, but she's not the last subject, I guess. And even we see that. And about Hill, the things is just very blurry because nothing is concrete about him. He may be dead, or he may be just another avatar of the entity that is just running the show behind. So I guess ending reminds us of something that maybe fear doesn't end with sunrise. Sometimes it just resets. So that is actually kind of time loop you would just expect from this film. So particularly I like the movie, and the pacing of the movie at the start was actually slow, and then at the mid near the intermission it just we just came to know about more and more truth and the character, how they are just trapped in the story. And in the ending we all come to know about the time loop and all stuff, and even some of the kills, some of the gore stuff in this movie was actually good, and it was at par, I could say. And the story was interesting. It was not something of a new kind of story you would hear, but it is kind of story that you just like to hear because it's about time loop, and it's presented in a very different way, kind of a very I guess young type of way, because we are introduced to the young characters where the group of friends are just investigating that what has happened with the Melanie. So this is kind of a new perspective or take about this movie, and I personally think that this take makes the movie apart kind of a different thriller from the regular movie that we see, where this kind of time loop is just happening with 1 or 2%. So actually, in the center of this movie, the glory in the Glory Valley, and because it follows a group of friends, so uh, it may appeal to a young audience, young people, that because it is centered around them. So I think this is a positive point of the movie, and especially about the strength of the movie. I think performance by all the cast is just impeccable, and they are great. And I guess it's visually a haunting mix of atmospheric dread actually, and the psychological surrealism is present in each and every scene. Every scene, like the Hereditary movie that was released in 2018. So I think it's a layered and very unsettling and smart horror film actually, that plays with your mind and that rewards patient actually, because and it's a kind of a movie that is suitable to a specific niche of audience that loves the genre of slow burn horror, slow burn terror. So it's all about the movie. If you like such movie, so you can subscribe to our channel for more such expansion. Thank you.